We good?
How did that meeting turn out?
It was a good turnout, and the first sergeants told us, what the mission was, and it was really good. And then there was, I think her name's Emily, who came over from Travis. Yeah, all on her own dime.
I wasn't. You ready? Right. I'd like to call the meeting to order for Sacramento Area Council of Governments Transportation Committee for November 6th at 10 a.m. sharp, and we have a quorum. That's pretty amazing, right? And let's start with the Pledge of Allegiance, and it'll be with led by John Clarici.
Oh, boy.
Yeah.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you very much. All right. Can we have roll call, please?
Good morning. Thanks for being here. Director Boomgarden,
Here.
Branscombe,
Yes, ma'am.
Fatman,
Here.
Clarici,
Here.
Early.
Here.
Jennings absent, Jones.
Here.
Sander absent, Vice Chair Desmond. Absent, Vice Chair Howdeshelt.
Here,
Chair Lauren,
Here.
and ex officio member Tacker for Sevis.
Here.
Thank you. We have a quorum.
All right, welcome to our transportation meeting. We have a not too complicated of an agenda today. I will be taking I'll be taking public comment on any items that are not already on the agenda today. Do we have any public comment?
There's no public comment.
All right, seeing that we do not have public comment, we'll be moving to the consent agenda.
do we need to do the disclosures in any way?
Oh, sorry about that.
No,
I-
no.
You have something to disclose?
I do. Oh. Yeah, no, I will disclose this at the regular SACOG meeting, but I was fortunate to be able to go to the Impact Conference in Portland on transportation. And it was amazing, and I went on behalf of SACOG. So I'll say more in the regular meeting, and I have a present for the chair, so I'll wait to do that in our regular meeting. All right, thank you.
Yeah, and Madam Chair, what I was referring to is what we do at our city council meetings is a disclosure under EB or the Levine Act. And do we have to, I'll look.
Go for it.
On the agenda, there's just a disclosure section talking
Right.
about a conflict of interest. I think that's
Right.
what.
So do we just have to, does the chair in this case just have to ask if anyone has any disclosures or conflicts that they have to do under the Levine Act?
Yes,
Okay.
yes.
Do you?
I
do you have
don't,
anything?
I got none.
You
I got
sure?
none.
Anybody? All right, we're all good.
Anyway,
That's a lot of lead up for not saying.
Right?
well, that's,
Madam Chair,
Yes.
I'd pull a consent item to beef up the agenda, but it's only the minutes, so I'm not going to do that today.
Yeah, thank you
Thank you,
very
Chris.
much.
I'll move the consent.
All right, we have a motion
Early
by
seconds.
Chair Branscombe and a second. Okay, and a second by Director Early. All in favor?
And we wanted to ask for public
Pardon?
comment. Just want to ask for public comment before we vote.
Oh,
on
sure.
the
You
consent.
see, we have a.
God, you guys. Fine, guys.
We are going fast today, I guess.
I did get
We-
this right after I said it. So before we vote, we will have public comment by David Kent. Thanks for that. Can't hear you yet.
Hello. Thank you, and particularly thanks to Director Corliss, which pointed out that the name Ileton was in one of the agenda items, which somehow I missed when I studied the agenda. We're going to have to work on how that occurred, but nonetheless, I am familiar with that agenda item, and I was very gratified to have that come before council and be passed, because with what could be characterized as the ugly word upheaval, which is now associated with Ileton, you probably all have some degree of fatigue considering Ileton in the news disproportionately. But nonetheless, one of the important ongoing procedural progress that we are able to make is cooperating with SACOG, and particularly the Green Means Go grant. So I wanted to thank you for your consideration of this extension.
Do we have any other public comment?
There's no other public comment.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstained? Motion passes. That was a big consent calendar. Moving to our information item. This
And,
will be- go
excuse
ahead.
me, I think we're gonna, adjourn as SACOG
Oh.
and convene as.
You guys, I did
Just wanna
read the
make sure.
agenda. I just want you to know. I always forget that we have a meeting in a meeting. I don't have meetings in meetings, another meeting. All right. So we'll adjourn and move to CRV Safe Committee meeting. We do not need to take attendance again, is my understanding.
Right, we'll just note for the record that Directors Rickman and Singh, our San Joaquin members, are absent.
Perfect. And do we have any public comment on items that are not on the CRV credit?
There's
Uh,
no public comment.
All right, excellent. We have one consent item. Before presenting it, I will ask if there's public comment on the consent for this.
No public comment.
I am just noting that I am trainable. All right, and yeah, thank you. Looking for a motion on the consent for approving the minutes of the June.
Early
5th
moves?
meeting. We have a motion by Early and a second by Clarici. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed, abstained. Thank you very much. We have a receive and file item that will be presented by perhaps Chase McFadden or
Chair
There's-
Lauren, that,
We don't need to hear
You
the
don't need to
item.
present- all right,
unless you have
perfect.
Questions about it. We're just, since we have a little bit of time, I can briefly say.
that would be
We
great.
included this as a consent or as a receive and file item. You just approved as the Transportation Committee this item. However, since it is funded through CVR Safe, we wanted to make sure that the entirety of the CVR Safe board was aware of this, even though the other members are not present today. So that was the purpose of the receive and file.
Well, that is excellent. With no other items, we can adjourn the CRV meeting and go back to opening our SACOG transportation meeting. And we have an information item to present, item number 5. Hopefully it'll be Summer Lopez. Great.
Take your time.
Thank you.
It's okay.
Okay, good morning. Thank you for being here today and for showing up for this one information item. My name's Summer Lopez. I'm the program manager over active modes at SACOG, which includes the Regional Trail Network. And today I'm joined by Sabrina Drago from Drago Vantage and Brian Hughes from BBK. And we also have Mia Candy, who's our project manager from Tool Design online today. Brian and Sabrina will be giving an update on the Regional Trail implementation strategy. Today's item is an information item, and so we're looking for feedback and discussion and to answer any questions that you might have. Next slide, please. Thank you. So this is our agenda. I'll give a quick project recap, and then we will dive into governance and funding, and then have plenty of time for questions at the end. Next slide. Thank you. As a reminder, the Regional Trail Network was developed with our partners back prior to 2022, and then it was developed into a plan that was adopted by the board back in 2022. Currently, SACOG's working on an implementation strategy and technical assistance program that's focused on supporting jurisdictions with their trail implementation efforts. So far this year, we've discussed challenges and opportunities faced by trail implementers, the 2022 prioritization methodology that was utilized again this year to select 10 projects that really needed extra implementation support. And then most recently, we had you take action on those 10 projects. Next slide. So why governance and funding? After the 2022 plan was completed, the critical next step that we identified was figuring out how SACOG could provide more in-depth implementation support to trail implementers, specifically through governance models and innovative funding strategies. So trail governance refers to the overall organizational structure of the entity or entities that are responsible for things like construction, design, ownership, oversight, maintenance, costs, and general liability of the trail system. And currently, the type of support that SACOG provides trail implementers is technical assistance and funding primarily through competitive grant programs. The final implementation strategy will come before you for adoption next spring. And as a part of that, we want to include this menu of governance and funding options. The goal of today's discussion and its eventual incorporation into that final strategy is not to identify just one model to move forward with for governance and funding, but to have this menu of options that we can continue to discuss into the future. We can consider today's item as the first of many discussions that we'll have around how SACOG and its partners can more efficiently implement the regional trail network. As we go through the presentation today, I'd like to remind you that attachment A has all of the content that we're talking about and sharing with you today. And I will pass it to Brian to kick us off with governance.
Good morning, everybody. Are you all ready for a short course in administrative law today? There we go. All right, so there are no recommendations on the agenda for today. I'd like you to focus on the types of governance that I'm about to present and potentially how they could benefit a future trail system, taking into account where the trails are. You know, this is a multi-jurisdictional potential trail system, the types of oversight of the trail to which types of governance are overlooking it. So it's going to go through jurisdictions that are counties. It's going to go through jurisdictions that are federal lands. It's going to go through jurisdictions that are special governments, cities, and rural populations, dense urban populations, things like that. And each of the governance operational systems could benefit it in a different way. So the choice that could potentially be made isn't necessarily one of these four. It could be a combination, or it could be something else that we haven't thought of. However, the general four structures presented today will be governed by what's on the board right now. So we have 1 through 4, the no central structure, the memorandum of understanding, MOU, the joint powers authority, and the special districts. So each of these would have the job of overseeing the long-term constructions, operation, and maintenance of the trail system. So I'm going to pause on the funding and just talk about the procedural requirements to have the trail system exist, to have people use the trail system, and then have it exist into perpetuity at a sustainable level. The types of analysis for each of the types of governments are listed across the top. So we took the 4 that we listed and we talked about, okay, what would be the initiation timeline to get said type of government up and going? What would be the administrative startup efforts? What about SACOG's authority? What responsibilities would you guys have? What would your role be? What would the agency individual control be, that government that actually oversees it? What type of control would they have? And potentially, what's the funding authority potential? So this is the overview diagram. I'll go into each row on each subsequent side so you don't have to focus on the small prints there. So we're just going to focus on each row, and we'll start at the no central structure and end with the special districts. On the left-hand side, you can see a green arrow that kind of goes up and down, and that's a general indication of the decentralized or centralized nature of that type of government. You know, for example, the no central structure, you all exist in a kind of a JPA here with SACOG. That's not a no central structure. That's further down the row. If you were just loosely agreeing to do things as partners, that would be the no central structure. The special districts, you know, that would be an independent special district that would have independent authority and oversight outside of each of the jurisdictions. That would be the most centralized. All right, so.
Hey, Brian,
Yes.
and Chair Lauren, do you mind if I just say one quick
Go
thing
ahead,
here?
sure.
Because it might feel like you're jumping into chapter 2 of the book.
Sorry.
No, it's fine. And I just, because this is our main event and you're here to learn a little bit about governmental structures. I just to back up, and again, in case you're wondering like, oh, why are we talking about governance structures, right? So the Trails Plan is, I think, one of the most exciting things we've done under the leadership of Summer and our staff, right? We've knit together a vision, as she showed you on the first slide, of a 1,000-mile network. And one of the things I think we have learned in this whole process is it is not just simply a There's 28 cities and counties, and sort of who owns this thing? There are hundreds of special districts, reclamation districts, right? What's so interesting is we are blessed as a region with all these trail opportunity corridors, and nobody owns it. Not literally owns it, but nobody owns the idea. Nobody own, and without that, right? As we were developing the plan a few years ago, we would talk to folks like, oh yeah, this is a great corridor, but you know what? Nobody's expressed an interest in it. And it's just it stops there and starts here and stops there. And so it's been on our plan forever, but there hasn't really been a big push behind it. And so with a lot of again, the work that Summer's been doing, we looked at some other regions around the country and even in California and noticed that there is some kind of, somebody has some ownership over these plans and implementation, right? It's as if you had a plan for light rail, but you didn't have any corridors or right of way or anything else, right? So that's why we've been spending this time on governance, and so why we're bringing it to you this morning. I hope that's helpful context. Okay, yeah.
I really appreciate the framing. Thank you. Yeah, go ahead.
So
Dr.
I appreciate the framing as well, because I was unsure. I was happy to jump into chapter 2. So is the thought then that we would be sort of the visionary and we would be owning, because to your point, it's been on our plan for a really long time. And so are you trying to get our buy-in? I mean, I'm just, real question.
Yeah, so I think as you'll see as we're like going through all the different structures, we want to hear your feedback. There's a lot of different flexibilities based on the different types of governance structures that we have. Right now, under the no central structure, we're focused on technical assistance and we're focused on grant funding primarily. But there's some really innovative structures that exist out there. There's also a lot of innovative funding strategies that we could tap into if we maybe explored some of these other governance ideas. So buy-in, yes, but also really just kind of interested in hearing what your thoughts are about these different types of structures. If maybe you've seen something else somewhere that you're interested in sharing with us that we could look more into. And then, like I said earlier, we really just want to move forward with having a menu of options that we can then continue to discuss after we adopt this in spring. And do you have anything to add?
I have another example that might help. I take it from the perspective of the user. Being a big hiker and triathlete in my younger years, I would do long distance events, and that would take me across multiple jurisdictions through multiple trails. And oftentimes I would enjoy the fact that I could hike the Appalachian Trail, go through multiple states, and it was always the Appalachian Trail. I could ride down the trail along the Sacramento River, and it was always that trail. And so then the question to you is, if you're going to do 1,000 miles of trail, how do you offer those people using it that same type of continuity? How do you offer the same type of trail, the same type of signage, the same type of marketing, such that they really fully feel like they're part of something bigger than that one segment that they're on?
To the chair.
Yeah,
As you present these alternatives, and there's 4 of them, right?
sure. Yeah,
And right now, we're in the no central structure
correct.
mode. Map those, if you would, against how we've been operating. For example, right now, it ain't broke, but it may not be optimal, right?
Sure.
Not
And I
broke,
can just,
But probably not optimal.
yeah,
But I'm guessing optimal is fairly expensive. Once you create a bureaucracy to support something like this,
it is.
it's going to be really expensive. And who's going to bear that expense?
Mm-hmm.
And if it's going to be special district, it's going to have to make its way onto property tax bills, which are going to require approval
Mm-hmm.
of all of these jurisdictions. So that gives me brain cramps thinking about that. And so I'll be looking at this personally in terms of mapping it against where we are, at what point with some central authority. Now, the Appalachian Trail, for example, is that one?
It's one
entity that controls
continuous,
it?
yeah, it's one continuous trail. It's
That's
overseen by,
multi-state.
yes, that's overseen by the Appalachian Trail Club.
That's a different thing.
Yeah,
Okay, anyway, but if you would map that against where we are,
Sure.
and I'm deep, if you're gonna come up with a recommendation, could you give it to us early so we know where you're going? Because I'm guessing it's number 4.
You know, asking the special district's attorney which one they like is, you're probably going to get a special district as the answer. However,
Yeah, well, and I presume the team, and I can understand why they might want to be there. But as they make the pitch, it has to be worth the cost and the trouble. And it looks, there's a lot of cost, there's a lot of trouble, and just getting onto those, being able to collect property tax, because special districts, they have to make their way onto all of these jurisdictions. So you're gonna have all of those approvals.
Absolutely.
And that might be a bridge too far, you don't know.
yeah, it's interesting in the other side when I'm not sitting at that table at overseeing the other committee meeting. I run the practices cemetery district, special district practice. And so I have about 36 public
People are
cemetery
dying to
districts
get
that are
in.
my clients.
Yeah.
And all of them are not as rich as you would think. And
I didn't want to sidetrack you, I just want to get that.
No.
Thank you.
no,
I'm
it's an
looking
important
forward to
point,
this.
because the funding mechanism that's attached to each of these types of structures is significant, because once you accept that type of structure and getting into the more complex, it's harder to back out of it. And so it's not only that recommendation of which end type that you want, it's the timing of getting into that type. And so if you have this loose association of networks, even if your end goal and vision is that special district, which is by far not at this point, the timing of getting there, you could work through multiple different types of structures, because that's appropriate for the organization as a whole at that time.
Counselor, you're impressing me. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, please continue.
Could I just get a clarification?
Please.
Your use of the Appalachian Trail prompted this question.
Yeah.
Are we talking about multi-use trails, or are we talking about trails?
I think I'll let that.
Yeah, so the trails are multi-use pedestrian and bicycle trails, and the trail network is comprised of Class 1, which is the multi-use paths. And then largely for on-street connections, we're looking at Class 4, which is the protected bikeways.
So we're not talking about these trails that are, like
Like unpaved, yeah.
like the Western States Trail.
Yeah, and I think that's important to note, because actually that's something kind of unique about our region, is that a lot of our, okay. All right, continue.
All right. So, but I will take into account the question of comparing to what we have now. And I think the first example, the notion central structure, is the best comparison to what is existing right now. In terms of implementation time, there's none. You already exist. The partnership is the no central structure, in the sense that each jurisdiction would independently have to find the funds, find the time, find the crew, find the location, purchase the location, build it, operate, and maintain it on their own dime, with the handshake agreement that all of the branding, the size, the marketing would equate with the other jurisdictions that are a part of this system. What that would mean is you potentially have islands, and the timing wouldn't all work out. Question.
As soon as you say that, is right now, SACOG is driving this. Am I right? Okay.
Yes.
If it stays no central structure, then SACOG would be funding whatever does get done. And it wouldn't go to the tax bills of all the localities, and someone might say no, someone might say yes. SACOG's got a lot of juice in terms of getting compliance from our constituent jurisdictions. And there may be real value there, and it may be much lower cost to keep this kind of structure and just simply use the influence SACOG has in cajoling jurisdictions into cooperating.
Chris, you jumped to the end. You
Yeah.
just gotta let him finish.
Let's let him.
Let him pitch us.
And then,
Oh, well, no, all the way down. Once you go special districts, it's out of it's off of SACOG's books, and it's being paid for by property taxes of jurisdictions, and that's hard to do. And
Let him finish though, right?
Yeah, but we're gonna.
Yeah, I hope I was helpful to start this, get your wheels turning, get you warmed up on a chilly morning, foggy
warm.
morning, but I don't want to derail the presentation. So let's go through the options.
Clarice would just like to ask one question.
Sure.
I believe that obviously we need to keep going. We need to keep going. And,
There's one thing on the agenda.
yeah, we need to keep going. But I do think too, there's also this idea that management will also kind of follow what the particular needs of the jurisdictions are, because I know from my county, quite honestly, getting that line on a map it's a big deal, but it's not that big a deal. Some places will be more of a deal, and I think there's gonna be a mixing of that, and that may point us in management structures.
Okay, back to our regularly televised broadcast.
Anyway, go ahead.
Yes, thank you.
It's going to come down to priorities. You know, what are the priorities of the individual agencies? What are the priorities of SACOG? What are the priorities of the actual plan? And what would the implementation of it look like? So the concept of a no central structure would fully succeed if there is that carrot or stick that allows all of the agencies to actually cooperate in such a way to make it an effective program. If that doesn't exist, then obviously the no central structure would fail, because then you would have disassociated sections. And again, I always take it from the user's perspective. When I would be on a bike, a road bike, and I'm driving down a multi-use trail that's paved, and I hit suddenly, and this is in Sacramento, unfortunately, and I hit a gravel section, well, my ride's done. And that's unfortunate. It's along the river. So it's regardless. This works if everybody has the same mindset and goes together, and can be very, very effective. All right, memorandum of understanding. We're going up just a little bit. So this gets away from the handshake deals or the centralized funding and oversight authority such as SACOG, and gets into a kind of a group hive mentality where you have some sort of centralized governing document that provides you that priority. However, an MOU is loose enough that it's not necessarily binding. Agencies can pressure you on it because you've signed up for it, but it's not necessarily a funding mechanism in and of itself. You're still relying on the independent authority of each jurisdiction to fund, construct, maintain, and operate said segment of the trail. It takes some time to implement in terms of startup time of agreeing to an MOU, getting the partners all on board, getting all the terms right. But, you know, the idea of that control is still not quite there. Moving on just a little bit further, we have a JPA. Now we're getting into an actual agency that's independent and separate from the jurisdictions that are seen in the prior examples. There are two ways to potentially manage a trail system via joint powers agreement. The joint powers agreement could be the funding agency that actually goes out and contracts for work, oversight, management, et cetera, on the trail system, or it could just be the central governing system that keeps everyone accountable and distributes funding or allowances for payments, things like that, oversight, generalized oversight, such as a SACOG, but just not SACOG. This does take some level of upstart because you need to have an agreement in place that's agreed to by, negotiated by all of the partners that enter into it. Funding mechanisms, there are carrots and sticks associated with JPAs, obviously, and you get the ability to have that independent authority that the JPA is. All right. Independent California Special District, the big one. California Special District is a unique beast in and of itself. California Special District would be that independent authority. It would not be made up of the jurisdictions. It would be separate and distinct with its own governance. You could be potential partners, but you would not be members. It would own, potentially operate, maintain, construct all of the systems itself and be responsible for those systems itself. It's still very flexible in the sense that, say you have a federal portion of the trail. Well, the feds aren't going to give up that and give ownership over to the special district. So the special district could partner through a funding agreement with the feds, such that it would maintain oversight, maintenance, construction of that portion, but not own outright the fee interest or easement that exists over the federal lands. It could partner with local cities, counties, jurisdictions, if those jurisdictions did not necessarily want to provide fee ownership or easement ownership of that portion of the trail. However, the Independent California Special District could outright own the entire trail system if it wanted to, but it doesn't have to. The uniqueness of the Independent California Special District is the inherent perpetuity of its lifespan, as opposed to the other types of entities. It will exist into perpetuity. It will have oversight authority and jurisdiction over the trail system, and it will be liable for the long-term viability of that trail system. It is the ultimate example of an oversight authority to maintain and effectuate the goals of this plan. However, it is the most expensive. And that would be where the funding comes into play. But I want to pause because this might actually be my last slide. Yes. And so I want to see what you guys, and I'll take it back to the first one with all of them listed. What questions, comments, concerns do you guys have about this? I'll posit this thought with everyone. This isn't an example. This isn't kind of a thought program of what type of governance do you think would fit for a generalized trail system. This is with the trail system that's proposed in the plan and with the idea of who might use it, which could be the best long-term and how could you get there?
If we're open for questions or comments, I don't want to go first.
Yeah,
Someone else
just-
is ready.
I'm just ruminating on those questions. Those are really good questions.
wanna go? John?
Go ahead, Director Calucci.
Director Calucci, could you use your microphone, please?
Microphone.
I can hear you.
I can't.
I bet you all those people back there could hear me. I don't, they should be in the room. Okay.
Me too.
Thank you. I think you still need, I think you still kind of in the biggest picture before, I'll tell you what I think in a second. You need to know exactly what all the project, you need to have a flavor for what the jurisdictions are grappling with, because that would lead you somewhere. My gut tells me that the MOU, but could you have like an MOU, but SACOG might still be the sort of coalescing entity?
Absolutely.
Okay, great. That was my question. You
Yeah.
see?
These are the strict 4 types.
Yes.
The answer is not going to be one of these 4. It's
Right.
going to be something else. You could have a plan that, and honestly, my recommendation is to not pick one of these 4 for the first portion of the project, because you don't have a project. And so you're going to have a no central structure just to make sure that everyone's on board and everyone's capable of participating with the same vision. And then you would jump off potentially into an MOU or, a JPA if you wanted to get it off the ground quickly. And then once you really start investing in the project in terms of construction, oversight, management, operation, then you would potentially come to your final vision of what that governance would be.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. This is, I love this discussion, and I love that it is part 2, building on the great work that we have all done collectively and the priority we've placed on a regional trail network with SACOG. I think of another example we have locally, the American River Parkway, obviously 26 miles. That's something unique established by the legislature. I'm not suggesting anything like that level of formality for our regional trail network. I do wonder, I think about, we just started the tolling authority, a new JPA to oversee operation, maintenance, everything else. I think of this almost analogous to that in some ways, but we certainly, SACOG as a JPA doesn't extend to the operation maintenance of our respective transportation network in our respective jurisdictions, yet we still do a great job of coming together and finding funds for our transportation networks in our individual jurisdictions and as a region. So I know this is just informational at this point. And I appreciate what you said is like, hey, we're not, we're gonna, this is initial presentation about this, and we're gonna see how things evolve and what might fit best. But is there a way we could keep it, I guess, the way we manage the rest of transportation within our region? Keep it, maybe it becomes a committee of SACOG, and maybe it entails a little more of a financial investment by the respective jurisdictions instead of forming a separate governance structure. I don't know. I'm just throwing it out there because I think I don't want to necessarily commit a jurisdiction to, maybe we don't want to commit each jurisdiction to maintaining their respective trail network as their number one priority in their jurisdiction. I don't know. I'm a little reluctant at this point anyway to explore a formal governance structure.
I think.
And I know you're not asking for this.
No,
for that today either. So.
But you make a good point, because I think everyone should think about, and I go back to like, okay, well, what types of jurisdictions is it going to go through and who are going to be using it? It will necessarily go through rural areas where maybe some of that population, just because it's so sparse, won't actually be using the trail. So should that jurisdiction be burdened with the financial strain of constructing, operating, and maintaining that structure if it's really the people from the surrounding jurisdictions that will be coming on it? Sure, it could bring people into the area, higher tax dollars, sales, and things like that. But what if the trail system goes through farmland where there are no shops? So you really can't make that argument.
Director Branscombe.
Thanks. It'd be interesting if we had a slide here that showed the trail network in its full glory. Do you have something like that with you?
We don't, I should have thought of that in the attachments. I didn't attach that, but we do have a website that has our full trail network on it.
Well, that's a website. Here we are. Because it helps, I think.
Can you project that up onto the screen?
Thank you. That would be wonderful in thinking about this.
And as a reminder, what is amazing about the plan is it really connects not just every single incorporated community, but every corner of the region.
Oh, yeah.
Right? So yeah, if we can pull it up.
I've all seen that before. I just forget what it looks like. Maybe it's changed.
While that's coming up, I'd like to make the other comment that I thought of while the conversation is going on is with the comment of the American River Trails. There is a type of local identity that's attached to each of these trail systems that each of those jurisdictions would want to maintain. Sure, it's part of a larger system, but this was our trail and this was our local project and our benefit. And I don't necessarily want to recommend a government structure that would lose that local identity. That it is possible to have branding or identity that exists across trail systems. So I always take it from the perspective of the user. I'm going down the American River Trail system. I know I'm on the American River Trail system. I appreciate it because it is that. But I also know that it is part of something bigger. So potentially how that would work is on signs that say American River Trail System. Underneath of it, it would say part of the greater trail system named X. So I also want to posit that thought with all of you that I don't want to lose that local identity that makes those smaller community trail systems great.
Thank you. Director Baumgarten?
Thanks. I don't want this to be construed as not supporting a regional trails network, but to follow up with Director Desmond's comments about priorities. It seems to me that I hate to give up local control, right? I want to be part of the team, but I don't want to give up local control. I like the comments just made about, hey, here's our segment and it's part of the greater regional network. I think that works well. A memorandum of understanding is something I think I would favor at this particular point, just because it keeps us together, but it does allow some flexibility at the local.
Thank you. I would like to make a comment. Chairs usually last, so how about, do you?
No, go ahead.
Okay.
Go ahead.
And I will preface it by, I don't want to be the sign police. And also just coming back from a conference where I took one of the pathways of the conference was to go walk around the city and look at what they've done with signs and why they've done them and how long they studied what to put in these signs. So I will just say that to me, that a minimum requirement would be, if there's land trail quality, like if you're suddenly gonna go into dirt, like you might want to know that before you take the trail. If your map is a certain like scale, I would want everybody to kind of say the scale of their map and maybe something like a heads up map. Like if all the maps are directional to where you're looking at the map instead of this one's north, this is, whatever. Heads up, if they're heads up maps that, and everybody knows they're going to see one of those, that's kind of a good minimum ask. And then maybe public input or safety as something that would be a minimum, like, if you're stuck here and there's an emergency and your phone isn't working or I don't know, your phone's working, who do you call? Or who do you report there's a problem to? Those are kind of minimums. But I would not want to impinge upon local control or the kind of flavor of communities. I know that Winters has its own feel. Marysville has its own feel, what have you. Davis definitely is going to have a bicycle on there, so I wouldn't want to impinge upon any of those, but I think a minimum map requirement or a minimum suggested requirement would be my suggestion.
That's a fantastic point. And I think you're getting to the idea of continuity. How can a
Yeah.
person feel that they're on the same trail, but feel the local aspect as well? If I'm potentially foreign to the air, whether out of state or out of country, how can I necessarily know that I'm safe and I'm in a reliable trail at any part of the trail? That if there are safety features at one side, that those same safety features would be at the other end, but still maintaining that continuous nature, the continuity, and receiving the local flavor at the same time. It's a tough ask. It's tough, but
It is a tough ask, but if you're, for example, at Cold Canyon and you're going over where it's just rock scrabble, there's no directional signs. But when you get on that trail in the beginning, it says you're going to go over rock scrabble. That not to be alarmed, you're not lost. You just have to keep going.
Yeah.
I mean, I would,
well, and also if
I'd
I'm
like
10
that
miles away,
assurance.
on a bike, I
Yeah.
don't want to do that because my bike won't go over those rocks. So I would want to know ahead of time that
Right.
that exists in my near future.
Excellent.
Yeah.
Director Branska.
Thank you. As a predicate, what are the color coding? What's the color coding on that graphic?
Yeah, so the dark green are the existing trails throughout the network. Those are trails that have been constructed by the jurisdictions. The light green color are planned trails. Those are trails that have been planned by the jurisdictions. And the purple is what we call study corridors. Those are areas that have been identified with partners as future potential connections between the trail network, existing and planned.
Thank you.
Yeah.
What have you mapped out the total capital expenditures required if you established all of these?
We have not done that, and that's something I've been recently
That's an
thinking
important
about.
number.
Yeah, so right now, under the implementation strategies that we're working on for those 10 jurisdictions, we will
That's-
have like
that's fine.
cost
That's
estimates,
fine.
but
Having the CapEx and then the OpEx, the maintenance, I imagine the maintenance on, and I'm certain Sue from Caltrans can help us on this, the maintenance on trails will not be the same kind of
Sure.
maintenance required by the state highway system and roads and what have you. I was wondering if in something operated out of SACOG, if the funding could be found and we could offer the funding to the jurisdictions on the condition that once it's built, you take care of it. Because then have your public works people, because I can't imagine, certain there would be some maintenance required, keeping some weeds down on the edges, whatever it would be. But define that. And that might go a long ways. It's just knowing, but you got to know. And you have to have it nailed down carefully, the CapEx, and that would be money coming out of through SACOG, wherever it came from. And then the OpEx, can that be separated from the CapEx such that the OpEx is handled locally by the jurisdictions? And I think both of those would be far preferable to having to sell an increase in property taxes to jurisdictions. Thoughts, that's sort of my big picture look right now.
Director Branson, not exactly answering that or addressing it totally, but one of the things we did do this year in our revised funding round, we have that system preservation program. You remember we just kind of talked about the funding for that. We have an explicit bullet in there. So it's not just about roadways, but for trail maintenance, maintenance of our active transportation network, including trails, as an effort to try to elevate this and emphasize the importance of this in our region, that it's not just about our roadways that need maintenance dollars, but it's also our trail network as we move forward to further building these out and implementing this plan. So that helps a little bit, but it's not exactly what you're getting at.
I think you need to break down the OpEx by trail segments, because certain segments are going to be more expensive to maintain than other segments. Knowing those numbers, I think, is an essential predicate to any further study of how it gets cut up and how it's managed.
Before we launch into the funding discussion, I have one comment I want to make that's kind of addressing a lot of the questions that we're getting. So one thing, so this has been a while, but I think it was back in February or March that we came and talked about the challenges and challenges and opportunities faced by our trail implementers. And Brian's talked about like kind of branding, or like what I would consider like trail guidelines, which I think is would be an awesome thing to do. But aside from that, there are 6 main challenges that have been expressed by our partners, both through the 2022 plan development and most recently as we've been working on this process with our trail working group. And those are, the big one is interface between rails and trails. The second is right-of-way and ownership. The third is agency coordination, partnership, and priorities. The fourth is buy-in and support. The fifth is funding. And the sixth is environmental constraints, permitting, and litigation. James did a great job kind of framing the conversation earlier on, but I felt like that would be adding to the things that he was talking about, just kind of keeping that in mind that yes, we want a cohesive feel across the trail network. That would be great. But more importantly, we really want to figure out ways that we can better support the partners as they're implementing the trail network. Funding is a really big part of that, but we hear a lot about things like rail. And we hear a lot about like the right-of-way and ownership and all of the different federal and state and different landowners that are controlling different waterways and levees and all these things. So as Sabrina launches into her funding discussion, I just wanted to kind of set that frame just to let you know we're thinking about what the partners are saying are their biggest issues. And we really do want to try and address those in whatever way we can.
Thank you very much. Before you present, Director Bombari, I'm sorry.
I'm Boom Gardner.
Hudisha has some
Hudisha.
questions for you.
Yeah, so remind me what the timing is and what the decision is. I mean, it's stages, right? We're looking at governance.
Sure. Yeah, we are just right now in our implementation strategy
the infancy.
development. And then when we finish this, it'll be in the spring. We'll come back to talk about the draft strategy that's been developed, and that'll go over these challenges and opportunities. It'll go over the funding and governance menu. And then we'll also have a lot of information about the types of technical assistance we provided and a lot of insights and recommendations for next steps. And so that'll be in spring. And what you'll be adopting is that strategy. You're not going to be making any decisions on one specific funding or governance model at that point. We'll continue that conversation once the implementation strategy is
You know,
adopted.
and I think this has been suggested or implied in a lot of the questions. I think we need a SWOT analysis, right? This is very complicated, not only jurisdictionally, but from funding sources. I mean, I think of, you know, the bike trail that's west of Davis. It's, I don't know. Yeah. So thank you. That's enough for now.
Please continue.
Good morning, directors. My name is Sabrina Drago. I'm the founder and president of Drago Vantage, and I'm honored to present to you today a funding overview for how we can fund these 1,000 miles of trails. Is it on? I can talk louder. Okay. So building and maintaining a regional trail network requires coordinated and multi-source funding approach. It will require a blend of federal, state, regional, and local resources and must coordinate cross jurisdictions to be strategic for our funding. The funding landscape is highly competitive and is currently shifting. To stay competitive, our trail projects need to focus on safety, connectivity, congestion relief, economic benefits, and plan for long-term maintenance and operations. This funding toolbox illustrates how different funding layers fit together to build and sustain a regional trail network. No single funding source can deliver the system, and success will depend on combining grants, local revenues, financing tools, and maybe even innovative mechanisms. Federal and state discretionary grants can help launch major projects, but they require readiness, a local match, and strong regional coordination. Local revenue sources such as TDA funds, fees, or assessment districts can provide the backbone for a match as well as long-term maintenance dollars. Financing tools such as bonds or low-interest loans can accelerate the delivery of multi-segment corridors. And finally, innovative tools such as enhanced infrastructure financing districts or EIFDs, private-public partnerships, or even VMT mitigation banks can help fill the gaps where trails also support redevelopment or tourism goals. Let's talk discretionary funding, or the competitive grants that we all know and love. Discretionary programs remain essential for the planning and construction, but competition is very high. At the federal levels, Build and Safe Streets for All can fund multimodal projects, but the current priorities lean more towards traditional infrastructure of roads and bridges. Trail projects are most competitive when they demonstrate a regional benefit, address safety concerns, and have a long local commitment and support. Letters of support, advocacy, all the good work we do, cap to cap, and the like. At the state and regional level, the Active Transportation Program, the Caltrans Planning Grant, and your regional funding program remain important sources of funding. Readiness and local match are the key factors, and projects must be shovel ready and have a local match to consistently score higher. Local funding is the foundation for competitiveness. It demonstrates community commitment and provides a local match for most competitive grant programs. Common sources include TDA allocations, general fund, development impacts, park fees. Assessment districts such as CFDs and LLMDs can generate a stable funding for capital improvements as well as operations and maintenance. Local ballot measures can be challenging to pass, as we all know, but they can create a long-term flexible revenue source. So we're all familiar with Measure A in Sacramento County. Measure A in LA County is just for parks and recreation. It's a $90 million annually just for operations, maintenance, and capital of the Parks and Trails program is in Los Angeles County. Financing tools can help advance high priority trail corridors, but by quickly borrowing against the future revenues. General obligation funds can offer low interest rates, but they require a 2/3 voter approval. Local revenue bonds provide flexibility for joint power authorities or assessment districts as well. Loan programs such as the California iBank or TIFIA can offer low and sometimes no interest loans for long-term financing that can support planning, design, or construction. These finance options can accelerate project delivery and create cost efficiencies by bundling construction into fewer phases and creating efficiencies, but they do require a long-term revenue source. Innovative tools can also supplement grants and local revenues by creating new locally controlled funding pathways. EIFDs use future property tax growth to fund public improvements such as trails, plazas, and streetscape improvements. While EIFDs do provide a dedicated source for infrastructure, their effectiveness is limited by Prop 13 and its need for sustained growth. Public-private partnerships can leverage private or nonprofit resources to plan, fund, build, or maintain trails. P3s can share the risk and accelerate delivery. The Highland in New York is a good example where private money came in to help fund a regional asset. However, this also does require a funding source. Another innovative option is the VMT mitigation bank. So with the passage of SB 743, all future development projects require VMT mitigation funds to offset the additional driving and emissions that are generated by the development. So under SB 743, these funds can fund projects to reduce vehicle travel for trails, bikeways, and transit access improvements. While this is still in the concept phase and has not been utilized anywhere for trail network, it is a potential option for funding. Sustainable operations and maintenance must also be a part of every funding consideration. Doesn't do us any good to build it and then let it waste away. Our funders expect clear O&M plans to outline who is responsible and how these costs will be covered. Possible strategies include setting aside dedicated revenue from local taxes, using assessment districts, establishing interagency MOUs, and developing adopted trail programs. Maintenance reserves and endowments can help ensure long-term upkeep as well. Reliable O&M funding protects safety, enhances the user experience, and keeps the regional network in good condition so that Brian can keep riding his bike. Bundling trail segments into larger corridor scale investments can strengthen the funding application and shows regional coordination. Project readiness is also essential. Projects with advanced design, environmental clearance, and strong cost estimates move more quickly through funding cycles. SACOG can help align regional priorities by sharing data and providing template to streamline applications as well. To remain competitive, trail projects need to be positioned as a core transportation infrastructure with measurable outcomes and strong partnership. Strong collaboration, secured match funding, and regional impact makes the network more competitive, sustainable, and deliverable. And to tie it all together, governance and funding are directly connected. How the network is organized affects how SACOG and its partners can pursue and manage funding. The goal today is just to present ideas and share different options. This is not a recommendation, but this matrix on the screen illustrates from SACOG's perspective and based upon Brian's presentation, what funding sources are available depending on which governance model is adapted. And that concludes. Any questions?
Yeah. And Director Desmond. Oh, sorry.
Question about this.
Yeah.
Chart though, Sabrina, and thank you for the presentation. I mean, this suggests that we have a lot less options, of course, relative to the sophistication or the formality of the governance structure. But if it were to stay somehow housed within SACOG, it would be green across the board, wouldn't it?
As it currently stands today, we're in no central structure. So the SACOG can chase the grants, but cannot chase taxes, bonds, or loans.
Those local
Yeah, local jurisdictions would have that have more flexibility, but from a SACOG
Of
perspective.
course, yeah, okay, all right. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Director Branscombe.
Yeah, you mentioned, thank you for your presentation. You know what you're talking about. Broad scope of finding money.
It's my
And
job.
I'm certain you filtered this on your own and looked at some of these things and said, fat chance. There's some things that are just, you can't push a rope. And for example, every jurisdiction wishes we had a lot more money for maintaining roads, getting rid of potholes and what have you. And people conflate trails with transportation and what are you doing building that trail when I'm driving over potholes every day? You run into those kinds of objections. LA County said 90 million a year.
Correct.
They got a population of 10 million. What's our population in our region?
2.6 million in the region.
2.16?
2.6.
2.6, yeah. Well, I don't know how long LA County's gonna be able to keep that up. They got a lot of problems down there. But
That's also just one of their sales tax initiatives. Yeah.
I anticipate serious problems with local funding, particularly sales of parcel taxes. Bonds, getting a bond, we can't pass school bonds. And loans, where the jurisdiction want to go in debt to do something like this. Those are real challenges. And I mean, it looks green across the bottom, but again, it's green with lots of challenges. This is a tough problem. I'm not trying to speak against anything. It's just a complex problem. I've been part of this committee now for a long time, and everybody's keen on the trail projects. So any comments I make are not contrary to the dream, right? Yeah. It's just how to get there. And
Director Branscombe, I mean, I appreciate it.
Sorry, I'm done.
No, this is good. We're glad we actually had this as the one big agenda item this morning. I mean, a couple of observations and thoughts just for you all to kind of keep the conversation going here and give us feedback, right? So we can come back and give you some more recommendations. One is, done well, not everywhere, but done well, trails actually will increase property values. And we've seen this across the US. The Atlanta Beltline was referenced earlier. It is a remarkable old freight corridor that circles the city of Atlanta. That was somebody's graduate thesis 20 years ago. What if we made that into a trail? And I absolutely encourage you to go to Atlanta and to walk or ride a bike on that Beltline and see the economic development that has followed. So partly what we're trying to do here is make you envision this a little bit, right? Like for us to be a bit optimistic that A, we can create value and potentially we can capture value around trails. And that's potentially a way to monetize it. The other thing I would say is, and I hear you, we all hear you on the 2/3 and school bonds at 55 is hard to do. But there are some interesting, I think, maybe some hopeful signs for voters around open space, trails, and parks. And so we're working with Valley Vision right now on a poll, a 6-county poll, looking at infrastructure, transportation, trails, and housing. And so stay tuned. We'll have the results of those for you fairly soon. And it's not that in that top row, right, we couldn't work with our partners to go get bonds and sales tax or bond off existing sales tax or even loans. I think the question is, how much do you want to accelerate the construction of the trail network? Because with the no central structure, I would say the team here is doing a great job, right? There's a lot of enthusiasm. We're going to keep chipping away at it. And maybe that's fine. But I think what we wanted to do is to sort of like bring you this morning is a little bit of an idea of, do we want to keep chipping away at it, or do we want to actually entertain? And we're not talking about big levels of government that like will take away your local control. It's really more sort of a shared governance model. And I'll give you one more use case. There was a railroad corridor, an old corridor, abandoned corridor that came up for sale, I don't know, a couple of years ago. There was some money available, but there was nobody willing to step in and actually purchase it, right? And we as an agency don't have the ability to own property, nor do we want to. So, that was an opportunity that I think gave some of us pause, like, okay, who actually owns the vision of this trail network? How can we collectively try to advance this? Do we have the existing decentralized structure that can help us accelerate this, or do we need to think about something a little bit more ambitious?
Thanks. I think when this kind of leads itself back to a few meetings ago, performance and preservation. And I think Director Branscombe mentioned, at least in our area, road maintenance right now is a big priority. However, we don't want to lose sight of the fact that a regional trail network would be valuable. And so therefore, it's that finding that middle space or whatever space that we can that allows us to indicate, at least up in our area, hey, we want to continue to support this. However, to his point, we start building trails instead of fixing potholes. My email is blowing up.
And again, I think that's exactly it, right? In some ways, when we did the trails plan 3 years ago, I think what we found is that everybody had pieces of these trail segments in their plans, but they were not the high priority, right? So they had sort of been out there and kind of languishing. And that makes sense. If you are trading off potholes and trails, it totally makes sense. And I think what we're trying to figure out is there a way we can elevate both somehow? Because if we make them compete against one another, they will languish.
All right.
Yes.
Thank you. Marysville passed an additional 1-cent sales tax increase in 2016. Thank God. In fact, if the mayor preceding me had been smart enough and leveraged that, I wouldn't have been elected probably. We have been beneficiaries of that, and it makes a huge difference. Folks in Yuba City and Sutter County can't get one passed, and they're really pressed financially. So this is just 2 examples. And even with, we're just Marysville. Marysville has this, and Yuba County's doing okay. And having the water agency sitting on over $300 million in cash in the bank, and having they can't do everything, but they can do some things. I don't think they can do trails unless it's through water. I looked at that map. There's a very expensive link between Sacramento and Yuba and Sutter counties. That would be a very expensive link, lots of farmland. I wouldn't even figure on that. I think you'd have to look at a trail network in that region and then the trail network in another region. And where would the trail networks do the most good in terms of whatever the objectives are? And look at the most expensive ones, and that would be expensive to maintain too, that particular link. X that out and come up with a CapEx. It can always be a nice to have downstream. But again, I think it's going to require funding from outside. It's going to require outside funding. And I'm virtually certain this would not gain support in Yuba County and Marysville, and I'd be shocked as in Sutter County and Yuba City, because they're against it right now, and they're trying to get a 1-cent sales tax increase passed to cover basics. So those are real challenges, and so that's the environment you're working in. And I'm not criticizing anything that's been put up there. It's just what's the environment look like? And I don't know what it's like in Yolo, Sutter, Placer, and Sacramento counties.
Yeah, that's a great question. Could you scroll back to the earlier slide where we have the overview of the trail network? Should be maybe one, yeah. So these are the goals of the trail network. And one of the things that kind of has gotten brought up a lot today is recreation. But I do want to remind everyone that we're looking at all ages and abilities transportation option. Trails are the safest way to get people off the roadways, to make sure that pedestrians and bicyclists are not dying when they're going for their bike rides or they're getting to their destinations or when children are riding to school. So I think it's important to remember that, we're looking at things like health, and we're looking at things like recreation, very important, and economic development is something James brought up earlier. But improving safety and making sure that people can get to their destinations is also a top priority. And for the question that Director Branscombe asked about kind of maybe what's the synergy around the region, there are many challenges, and we recognize that, and we want to be able to support the partners in whatever way we can. But it depends. It's very county or very jurisdictional specific based on what challenges they're experiencing. There's a lot of rail issues up in Yuba City, and we're working really closely with them on technical assistance and an implementation strategy. We're working with 8 jurisdictions right now, providing in-depth technical assistance on things like design and application support, and trying to help them figure out what their next step should be. And then in addition to that, we're helping another 10 right now develop implementation strategies so they can figure out their next steps. So you're totally right on the spot. Like it is really challenging. There's a lot of issues. Rail is one of the biggest ones in our region that we're trying to kind of figure out how we can bridge that. Rail is a big one. Yeah. So you're right. It is very jurisdiction specific. And that's one of the things that we're trying to cater towards in our working group. When we bring our partners together, we're able to have those conversations, and people are learning from each other. And we do want to continue this synergy that's going and excitement. And remember that it is great to have connected trails for recreation, but also it's one of the best ways to get people, keep people safe and keep people from dying on the roadways.
On that note,
I have a dozen questions, but I'm only going to ask one.
go for it.
All right. So, first a comment, express a deep appreciation for the work you've done on this, because it then helps us figure out how to be visionary without getting out over our skis. Because you hear this balance between potholes and trails, right? And that's real. I mean, in the minds of those who are our constituents, they have different priorities. Our job is to balance that out in a way. Do you have metrics on trail usage that could be the building blocks for, a staged development of a connected trail system? Yeah, exactly.
I love this question, and we don't have that yet, but we do have counters. We have some permanent counters on 2 trail segments, one in Rancho Cordova, one here in Sacramento. So what we're actually doing right now is we just hired an intern who's looking at our counter loan program, looking at the data that we have available, and we'll have some kind of recommendations for how to move our counter loan program forward in the future. And that's one of the goals. I think it would be great to collect that type of data to support jurisdictions in collecting it. Because right now, the reason that we primarily run this counter loan program is to fill a gap for collecting counts for grant requirements. So great question.
I have
I
a
love that.
question for Sabrina. Oh, sorry,
Only
Mr.
one.
Corliss.
Only one.
I had a dozen. I'm down to 2.
Okay.
I'm just, can you explain how the counters work? Because I'm not
Yeah.
sure everybody understands.
Absolutely. So we have some permanent counters that are in the roadway. They have these kind of
Oh.
induction things that bikes ride their bikes over, or people walk over, and it counts their bodies. And then we also have temporary counters that we loan out to jurisdictions that they strap to poles, and then it does the same thing based on body heat or based on the tubes where they're riding their bike over the tubes. So a lot of great stuff. We have a lot of data, but we
Very
just haven't done
innovative.
anything with it yet. So
Elon
I love
might
this
be a
question.
little envious. So I wanted to look at the governance and financing. So in the very first, the no central structure.
You want
How-
you want the matrix? Up?
Yes,
Okay.
Yeah.
yes, the last slide you had, yeah. Yeah, thanks. And so in that second column, or in that whole row, how do you account for dedications that are part of development agreements, local funding that are CFDs? Is this, yeah, it's a 2-part question. So is this really just from the perspective of SACOG, or does this encompass all of the potential funding sources? Because,
This is from the perspective of SACOG.
okay.
So if SACOG developed an MOU with cross jurisdictions, these are the options that MOU can then pursue.
So it's a 3-part question, actually. So help me remember that funding comes from sometimes grants from SACOG, sometimes grants from local transportation agencies, and sometimes that community that has that CFD associated with it. Is that correct? Well,
It's-
help me understand.
It's many, many layers. So funding can come from a local CFD or assessment, a Melrose type thing. It can come from SACOG, which gets its funding from the state and from the federal government, and they do a discretionary program. It can come from the state of California through our gas tax and our SB1 program. And then it can come from the federal government. So there are funding sources that are, we call discretionary, that you have to apply for. That's the competitive grants. And then there are ones that are formulaic that automatically come to the jurisdiction.
Thank you. And Summer, so we have a pavement condition index. What you're talking about is developing a trail condition index?
That's a really interesting thought. We haven't talked too much about a trail condition index, but I think it was Director Branscombe that was talking about maintenance, and you mentioned like public works and kind of trimming back the trees and all that kind of stuff. That's the biggest thing that we see maintenance wise on trails, but maybe there is an opportunity that we could look into for pavement condition. That is interesting. I'm also thinking one of the things that I've been considering as maybe a next step as we continue this support. We're going to do another robust technical assistance program next year. Maybe we do also the trail guidelines, or start talking with the partners to see if that's something that they would be interested in, because that could address things like pavement conditions and things like that.
Good. Thank you very much, I did that again, Director Clavici.
And if this has happened already, because I wasn't around, is it possible to get some sort of like presentations from the various jurisdictions about kind of the scope of the challenge in their jurisdiction? Because I mean, from El Dorado County, Placerville, El Dorado County, I'm looking at this and I'm pretty familiar with these routes. Most of them are on a railroad route. Some of them go up Forest Road up to the El Dorado. And I'm familiar with my challenges, but it's hard for me to be familiar with other people's challenges and I don't know what they are. And some sort of, I think it would be, at least for me personally, it would be easier to have this discussion if I kind of had an idea of what the universe of things was out there. It doesn't have to be particularly in depth because, you look at Sacramento's big place, lots of people. Oh, there's a lot of green lines. Look at all the green lines here. It's crazy. But maybe that's not a big deal. Maybe all those green lines, putting them all together is, yeah, it's money and everything, but it's not that big a deal. I'm having a little trouble with that. For example, I look at my good friends to the north in Placer County, and I'm looking at a pink line that looks like it must go up the railroad right away, up and over the mountains, or is that Interstate 80 or what? Because that looks to me like it would be crazy. It's a lot, Oh, I know, there is the cool feature. Well, I don't have that open. I've just got a static, I have a static map. Is that the highway corridor?
Highway 40.
Well, 40 and 80 used to be the same thing, and there's places where 40 doesn't exist. Anyway, but that could be a big deal or no big deal. I don't know. It looks like a big deal to me.
I think
Yeah,
that's the old Pony Express route.
Yeah.
That's even bigger deal.
and I think
Okay,
it's-
so.
I think it's important to remember too, it was said at the last presentation that Christina led about trails a couple months ago, that every jurisdiction has their own trail plans. They
right.
have their own active transportation plans. And so, they have plans for a lot of these study corridors or the plan network.
Right.
But that is a great question about whether or not we could bring folks to present on trails. I mean, maybe that's something we could explore more.
Well, not generally speaking trails, but specifically that would sort of speak to this process we're going through here. Because to me, it's hard. I mean, I'll tell you right now, for me, El Dorado County, none of those funding things are ever going to work. No one's ever going to vote for them. Okay, I can just tell you that right now. And I'm not going out on a real thin limb here. And I also know that implementing most of what those lines in El Dorado County, yeah, it's a chore. It'll be a thing, but I know where those lines are. I can't speak to anybody else though. And if I'm asked to make a decision or at least inform a decision, it would be nice to know those things, at least for me personally. I don't know if I want to drag the rest of this committee through that, but I think it would be time well spent. I yield the floor back.
I would like to take public comment on the item. If we can pause our discussion. I believe we do have public comment on this item. David Kent?
Thank you. Here you are unexpectedly hearing from Ileton again. I wanted to, I'm the mayor, by the way. I just wanted to introduce myself, although I'm speaking today only as a private citizen because I just thought of what I wanted to say. I want to briefly commend Director Corliss, the staff of SACOG, and this board for attempting to coalesce this vision and increase the appetite for construction on a long-term project like this. I wanted to address two items. One is Mayor Branscom's concern about the competing priorities. For me, the answer to this, and I try to settle this down when I get the same challenges for what the city should be doing and how it should be spending its revenue. And that is, one is a short-term consideration and the other is long-term, and they have equal value in that if you are always fixing potholes, you eventually can just stop doing that because nobody will want to live in your community because you have no competing amenities. Also, if you just build trails and don't fix potholes, nobody will be able to drive to them. So clearly, you can't compete one against the other. You have to serve both interests. And in the same vein, for me, speaking personally, the idea of whether a survey indicates anybody's going to use the trail is irrelevant, because I don't care how that comes out. For a long-term vision like this that puts the region and California on the map, if nobody uses the trail after implemented, then it's for a future generation and it still has value. Thanks.
I appreciate your comments. Are there any other public comments on the item?
There's no other public comment.
Before I call on anybody, I would just like to say that I live in a very small community, Winters. What is it, 2.9 square miles? We're right along the 505 is a boundary and Highway 128 bisects right through the town. It's hard to walk from the end where the 505 is or the population past it, but we can have trails. We can have a trail that people that are by PG&E and so forth, that they could walk all the way downtown. They could enjoy all the downtown and they never have to cross the highway. They never have to be in danger of walking on that highway. So just for a small town like ours that has passed 5 bond measures for school and a recent tax measure, it's an and. This is not an or discussion for us. This is an and. How do we benefit our whole community? So I just want to say thank you for the presentation for a small community like ours. This is, this is our future and our present. So I want to say thank you. Are there other comments? Seeing none, I want to thank you for all the whole presentation and also ask if there are any staff comments. Do we have any staff wrap-ups for transportation today? Seeing none at 11:21, I will adjourn the meeting. Thank you.